Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Awaken the World. We are live on Mother's Day 2021. It is 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, of course, the 9th day of May, a Sunday. It's all relative. Live, right here. And you'll notice there's no title on the actual Facebook video, and that's because it demanded I put one there, and I rebelled and said no. Or I'll have to go and do it later. But that's okay, either way. So, as always, first and foremost, let me express my love for each and every one of you. Wherever you are right now, whatever state you're in, whatever situation you're in, it is actually quite perfect and is offering you the greatest opportunity for growth from this moment going on. That's the truth of it. And it may appear ugly, but that's part of that too. And you have to be willing to accept where you are right now and to love yourself as you are right now. There's nothing you should or should not be. And we're going to talk about a few of those things this evening as we talk about a little bit of relativity and relativity. Yeah, it kind of works for both actually, along with a few other tidbits on this Mother's Day. And don't worry, I don't expect anyone to be here. I'm sure you're all sitting down for Mother's Day dinner, and I hope that you are. And if you're not, welcome. And if you're doing something else, well, good on you. Go out there and enjoy your existence. And speaking of that whole enjoying existence today, we had a group member come kayaking with us today. We went out and spent a beautiful 3 hours on the lake, 3.5 hours. It was just picture perfect out. And then we're just blessed with a beautiful moose, some ground moose meat from a native friend of ours. And we had a moose burger. And I am sorry, I am not a vegetarian. I am not a vegan. I would say I am an accidental meat eater, which means I don't normally eat meat, but I don't balk at it the odd time it makes an appearance. I do tend to stay away from beef, however, and things like hot dogs and processed meats. It's the little bit of chicken here and there and some wild meat when I can get my hands on it. That's the main staple sort of deal. And then we followed the burger and a half up with a nice 4.5 kilometer walk through a forest nearby and a beautiful trail system that's through there. And we discovered a new trail and found just the most picturesque little spot. And I promise I'll post a picture of it a little bit later on the group page. So tonight we're going to talk about it's all relative and really, in order to understand this, we're going to kind of back the whole humanity truck right back up. And sorry, as I said, we were out for about 4 hours, and then the walk this evening. I'm a little toasted, and I had on suntan lotion. I promise you, I really did, because I have issues with skin cancer, and not that I care about any of that sort of stuff anymore. I really discovered today that I just have no opinion anymore about life or death. It's just all okay. It really is. And that's the place that I hope I can help bring you to one day, so that you look upon the world in equanimity. And that's what we're going to really talk about tonight on one level, okay? And that is, when we back the whole humanity truck right back to the beginning, we're talking about that two sides of a coin. Everything in this relative universe is, based on twos. And I know that sounds a little strange because there's lots of other numbers out there. But what I'm really talking about are the necessary appearance of two sides of something in order for it to be here. So, for example, you don't get dark without there being light. Because if it was just all dark, it wouldn't be dark. It would just be. We wouldn't know that that was dark. It would just be the state of things. And it wouldn't be until someone created light that we would be able to say, oh, well, that was obviously the dark we were living in all this time. And that's what I'm really talking about. The fact that we live in a relative world, and for us to experience anything, and I mean anything, we have to accept both sides of it. So in other words, and I see the first commenter is Carol. Hi, Carol. Happy Mother's Day to you. And maybe I should back this whole truck up even a little bit further. I don't know why I'm stuck on trucks in reverse today. And I was kayaking backwards too. Maybe it had something to do with the weather, the movement of the Earth's magnetic field. I don't know. But here's the deal. I am not big on Mother's Day at all. I got to really tell everyone just that right now. And I'm going to give you just a tiny bit of history on Mother's Day, okay? Way back in 1907 down in the States, there was this fantastic woman who really wanted to make a day for celebrating, compassion and caring and the role of mothers and women in general. And within 7 years, by 1914, Mother's Day was born as a set in stone sort of national holiday. Well, here's the ironic part of that. The woman who was responsible for the creation of it, by that point, was spending the rest of her life trying to undo it because it had been so over commercialized and taken advantage of, and they'd missed the point. And I guess the reason I struggle with Mother's Day is I don't need a day, and it shouldn't be just a damn day. It should be every damn day to have respect for the role of a mother, to have a respect for women, to have a respect for the feminine aspect, and to revere its silent power in the face of the noise of the male egoic being. And to me, that isn't something that happens on one damn day a year. It's something that has to happen 365 days a year. I feel the same way about Christmas time, about every other bloody holiday there is out there, okay? I really just don't buy into them. Probably most of all, birthdays. In Australia, there are some of the Aboriginal tribes in Australia where the birthday is when you've mastered a new skill or you've matured in your outlook to a new level, and you actually recognize it, and so does your community. They consider that a birthday. It's not going one birthday to the next birthday, same day every year, because honestly, and the funny thing about a lot of people in the modern world, I guess maybe that's why we don't do it that way, because if it was evolving around maturity, we'd have a lot of 60-year-old guys who are really only 4, according to everyone else. The point of it is I don't need a holiday to understand the value of the feminine, to have respect for the feminine, to stand in a state of wonderment at what the feminine is capable is capable of in comparison to the noise of that male egoic self. So, okay, kind of off on a segue there. We'll blame Carol on that. Well, someone's got to be responsible. And we're going to go back to this thing about relativity. So as I was saying, we aren't willing to accept both sides of the coin. And, Realistically, it's like the seasons and growing old. There comes a point where you don't want the hot and you don't want the cold. You want the nice little space right in between the two of them, where it's kind of a lukewarm. And we forget that everything in our existence contains within it that thing which we think we want, as well as its polar opposite. And it needs it, because if it wasn't there, the experience here wouldn't exist. In other words, the experience of cold can't exist without the experience of hot. You'd have no way to identify a cold day if you never experienced a not cold day, a day when it was warmer instead of cooler. Everything in this universe is a juxtaposition, a play of two opposing forces, although they're not really opposing, we just call them that. And what you have in the middle is that place of balance. As human beings, we tend to not like the middle ground. We really don't. It's too easy. Or maybe it's too thin and teeny tiny to walk on and we're having a hard time. But either case, we tend to want it always good, in our judgment, of course. And we rail against it when it's not good. In other words, we always want it to be light. And we're not willing to accept the opposite of that light, the dark. We always want things to be sunny. But if we lived in a world like that, there'd be no plant, there'd be none of us, because there'd be nothing but desert. We need the clouds, we need the rain. We need the darkness and the cooling off and the balance. The trap, of course, that exists within this case, and I have witnessed it time and time again, and as I said, I really enjoyed Kelly because she is such a good example for so many of these discussions. So Mother's Day has been approaching like a giant glacier of doom heading towards the Titanic in the dark, according to Kelly's behavior anyways, for about the last 2 weeks. And she's been getting squirrelier and squirrelier and squirrelier as Mother's Day was approaching. Because of course, no matter what Kelly tries to do, she can't make her mother accept her. And I pointed out to Kelly that Kelly was not accepting the fact that Kelly's mother was not willing to accept Kelly, and that therefore Kelly was just as responsible for that sort of behavior. And if Kelly had a problem with her mom's behavior, then she had to equally have a problem with her own behavior in regard to it. Doesn't seem like it's being very nice, does it? Bad Garen. It's not. It's actually the most compassionate thing ever. Because it forced her to stop for a minute and think about what I had just said and realize that I was right. And it's not about being right, but it's the truth of it. That Kelly's mom has her own freedom of will and freedom of choice. Although that, as I said, that freedom of will is a little bit rocky, but always freedom of choice. To take that away is against the very fabric of our creation. I'm going to sneeze very soon. I'm just going to warn everyone. All that fresh air today and pollen and wind and everything, I can feel it. It's been coming and going. So when it happens, you'll know. And at the same time, Kelly is allowed her freedom of choice too. And when we're willing to accept each other's freedom of choice, and not blame the other person because we don't think they've made the right choice, we've began to make real progress. And believe it or not, this applies in this same conversation, okay? Because we would always like things to be rosy with those whom we love. The rosiness on it of any situation is always suspect to begin with. Think about it. I would much rather people be open and honest and expressive of what's truly going on with them than worry about if they're always smiling or always telling me that things are wonderful. We live in this world of duality where we don't want the duality. We want the money, but we don't want to have to work for it. Or maybe we want to work for it, but we think we're worth more than we're getting. No matter what it is, it's part of that duality. Both sides of the road are okay. You can choose to live in striving for that light zone all the time. Or you can choose to live in the dark. Both of those paths are totally acceptable to creation. It's all right. But all of the spiritual teachers throughout history have suggested that the middle path, moderation, was the better route for a human being to walk upon. So what does it mean to be on the middle path? Well, being on the middle path means when you get that Mother's Day I love you from a child who hasn't spoken to you for quite a while, or from someone else who you haven't heard from, you are grateful for the experience and the joy that it brings you. But at the same time, you are not attached to that experience in any way. In other words, you recognize it as a momentary uprising, and you're aware that sometime there will be a counterbalance to that. So therefore, you experience the joy, but you don't get too carried away with yourself. And you would say, well, why would I want to somehow experience a little less? But believe it or not, you actually get to experience it more. Because you're accepting both sides. You're not ignoring one part of it. You're realizing that what's occurring now is one side of the experience where the other side will have to unfold at some point in your existence. And rather than forget about that now and then get shell-shocked down the road, you're having that realization in this moment. And you're not clinging to that uplifting experience you're having. You're instead simply enjoying it fully, right there present. And you will be there present when its opposite appears. This is what it means by everything's relative. And when we're talking about relatives, when we're talking about our relationships with each other, we're still talking about that relative relationship. The fact that every single thing in this physical universe is all about the balance between two opposing forces to create anything. It doesn't matter what it is. That includes our family dynamics. So on Mother's Day, as a lot of other holidays, you may be missing someone in your family. You may feel separated from them in some way. They may have passed on. They may simply not be talking to you. You may not be talking to them. The way to heal yourself, because that's what this is about. It's about healing yourself. It's not your job to heal a relationship. And there's a reason why. A relationship is made up of two different sides. And each of those sides is responsible for its own aspect of itself. It's not responsible for the relationship. The relationship is nothing more than the sum total of the interaction of those two individuated sides. Now, I know that sounds a little too mathematical for some and may even seem confusing in the head to some, but the idea or the point is this: the relationship does not need work. The two parties or more in the relationship need work. And you can't make any other party in that relationship do any work. You're the only one. And it's not for the relationship. It's for yourself. It's for the primordial relationship, the relationship you hold with your own being, from whence all other relationships you are experiencing through your entire existence spring. I want to make sure everyone's crystal clear on that. The primordial relationship that you hold within about yourself forms the foundational underpinnings of every single family, friend, enemy, work. It doesn't matter. Every single relationship in your entire life is always an outward expression of the relationship you hold with yourself. Now, there's a little bit of a time delay involved in that whole process as well. So don't let it get too carried away in your head quite yet. But what this is an opportunity for, and here's the thing about relativity, the whole deal with relativity, the reason why we live in a relative universe and we need that push-pull dynamic is because that's the only way that we can actually experience ourselves. I know it sounds strange, but you need a mirror in this universe. Sucks to be you if you're a vampire. Ah! Turns out, vampires, no deal. They wouldn't even know who they were. Really, though, you need a mirror to know yourself in this universe. And the mirror is being reflected in all of your relationships, in all of your experiences. This can shift the issues that you may feel you have with other family members back where they belong, with you. It's not about what you can't control. You clearly can't control other people. You don't want to be controlled, so why would you ever try and control someone else? You can't make other people do what you want. No matter what you happen to think may be right for them, they get their freedom of choice. And if you truly care for someone, you're going to step back and let them have their freedom of choice. So if there's an issue in the relationship, understand that the stuff that built the issue with the relationship is a function of all the individuated components over time. You're not going to fix it overnight as much as you want to wave that magic wand and have it all go away so you can sit down on Mother's Day and everyone be happy, or at least pretend to be. That's not real either. The only thing you need to do is work on your part of the relationship. So in Kelly's case, it was to realize that she was being as unaccepting of her mother as her mother was being of her. And to instead try to commit to herself to begin to accept her mother as she is right now. Now, that doesn't mean that Kelly and her mother are sitting down for tea tomorrow. But what it can mean, and hopefully will mean, is that Kelly will not continue to suffer through her own misconceptions surrounding the relationship she has with her mother. You know, one of the things we do, and this is part of this mirror, part of this relative universe, is we look upon We have a mindset, a thought that precedes the conscious thought. And I've talked about this before. And for so many people, the unconscious thought that precedes every thought out of their head is, I'm not worthy. I'm not good enough. In some way, I lack. And I recognized this in Kelly still the other day. And I turned to her and I said, honey, why is it when someone cancels something or decides they're not going to come to you for piano or doesn't accept you, why is it always your loss? In other words, if someone chooses not to spend time with you because of their perceptions of you, why does that have to be your loss? Do you not feel value about yourself enough to be able to say, at a minimum, that we both lose out in equal measure? And for that, I am disappointed? Or perhaps a good place to start for so many, because of that unspoken thought that's living deep within them and infecting every conscious thought coming out, it's a very good idea to say instead, I'm not the one who loses out here. The other person is losing out on the experience of me. Now, be careful with that. It doesn't mean you're going to get upset, because you're totally missing the point. The point is you care enough about yourself to recognize that if someone is rejecting you, it's a mirror. They're rejecting you. It's really a gift, their rejection of you. I know this is going to sound so strange, but when you are rejected over and over again, those are loving souls. You don't have to look at the egoic self. Look beyond that. Those are loving souls that are trying to hold up that mirror to you and say, stop rejecting yourself. Because as long as you're rejecting yourself, the whole world is going to reject you. Why? Because the whole of creation loves you. That's why we get smacked right in the face with the very thing that we need to face over and over and over again. And it's a gift. When we get hit by that rejection, we don't have to choose to perceive it as our loss. We can perceive it as our gain. Gain on the level of awareness that somewhere within us, we are still rejecting our own self. And find out what it is about ourselves that we're not willing to accept yet. What we're not willing to forgive. And if you need help with that, if you're struggling with how to come to peace with yourself, I have about 750 videos you can go through, or if none of that gets to you, get a hold of me and we'll talk. Everything in our creation is a balance, and balance is about a push and pull of two different energies. Neither one of these energies is a place that we can live for any length of time. If you live in a state of bliss for too long, you lose the state of bliss. It's no longer blissful. You need to experience not bliss for a while in order to make bliss worth the experience. This is why states of satori and deep meditation don't last. After a time, the novelty disappears. And the being that is here for infinite experience and infinite expression and infinite growth needs to move back out of that satori and experience not satori. When we're willing to accept both sides of the coin, when we're willing to accept that everything around us is relative to us, which means we always have to look at, how is this speaking to me? Because as I've said many, many times, all of creation is focused just on you. It doesn't care what anyone else chooses or does. It only cares what you choose and what you do. And from its point of view, your choice is infinite. Allow your reflection of your own perceptions to reflect that infinity as well. Much love to you this Mother's Day. That's really about it this evening. The point I want to drive home tonight is that every relationship, every experience is an opportunity for us to see ourselves clearly. Be objective and loving with yourself. There is no state of being that you should or should not be in. You are quite perfect in this moment, just the way you are, and it will offer you the opportunity to grow and evolve. Much love this Mother's Day. Namaste. Have a beautiful Sunday night. We'll catch up again very soon.